Ready, ready.
You are live. We're ready. We're live. We're happening.
Yay.
Yay. Wow, this is going to be an awesome conversation today. Just because, girl, we've been friends for how many years now?
Oh my gosh. I want to say probably since 2002 or 2003, maybe.
Wow, that long, huh?
That long. Yep,
That's
definitely.
amazing.
I know. For a
It can't
long
be too
time.
bad if I'm still a friend of yours, that longer distance.
I know. I know. But we reconnected, which was great.
Oh, that's true. Actually, I don't even know how we lost connection. Was it just we got busy with life?
We did. We did. And then, Facebook became so popular and it was so easy to start accessing around the world. And, you had seen my profile and I saw yours and we just kind of reconnected and the rest is
Ah,
it's
there you go.
a wild ride.
The power of Facebook. See, some of
Yes,
some of what Facebook's about is good, right? There we go.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So these conversations, my friend, really are just a daily conversation. Let's backtrack. When you kind of go into your New Year's resolutions, your goals, or for me, it's a theme for a year, and I always want to know that I'm moving it forward, right? So
Hmm.
if for me, my lens this year is to my hope, my lens is to hope that people see humanity. That's what I really, really would love for my year, right? So what does
Right.
that mean? It means so many different things. And I've got to think, well, what's one thing I can do to kind of know that I'm shifting it towards that as being, a real focus for me this year and what I'm doing. And one of those is that I'm putting together over this month a white paper on what I talk about a lot in my work, which is the need for a new approach to leadership.
Okay.
And so really one of those things that I thought could be an interesting sort of insight to put into the content of it was to have, conversations every day of this month with
Hmm.
someone different around what I'd love to hear is your thoughts around the need for a new approach to leadership, but also just so many layers to it. And I think there might be something that you say or think or are doing that I go, oh, I hadn't thought of it quite like that. So, if we're to do things differently, we've got to have new conversations.
Hmm.
And my hope is that these daily conversations is going to be a new conversation, something that maybe we haven't even thought about, but because we're talking today, having a conversation that, it opens up to, it opens up that Pandora box or whatever it is, right?
Hmm. Good.
So does that sound like a bit of fun?
Sounds like a lot of fun. I'm up for it.
I know. So firstly though, you've got an amazing story of I knew you when you were in real estate, but that's not what you're doing now. So tell me a bit about that. What were you doing? You were doing real estate for many years, weren't you?
Yes, yes. Since 1999, I went
Yeah,
into
right.
real estate and I did it till basically about 2019. And then I let it go. Obviously, my real estate was based in Chicago when we lived
Yeah.
there. And then when we made the move down to Phoenix area, I thought maybe, I'd continue it. And it just, last couple of years, it just wasn't doing anything for me. I was pretty burnt out from real estate. It's an extremely difficult job. It is a 24/7 job. And I just had enough. I just wasn't feeling like I was making the kind of impact that I was really looking for. And I wasn't being, fulfilled in a
Mm,
way that I felt like I could fulfill myself and to help others. And so
yeah.
when I got down here, I had, issues. I had a lot of issues with food. And, I've been clean and sober for well over 30 years. And so that was not really an issue for me, but the food was still an issue when I moved down here. And
Mm,
I, for me, using food to cope. And so that started to springboard me into finding other options other than OA, 12 steps, and I found Smart Recovery. But once I found that, I started attending meetings, met a dear friend of mine who is also a soul sister, as you are with me. And, she was encouraging me, to get my certification, be a facilitator with SMART, and open up a community group, which I ended up doing. And so that led me into, working in recovery, centers in Scottsdale and as a behavioral health technician. And then I moved into getting my degree and going for my master's in addiction counseling. And I knew 100% that this was what I was called to do, because I knew that for me to fulfill what I feel like I need to fulfill is to pay it forward and create the best, most positive impact that I possibly can to help people that suffer from addiction and mental health issues. And so I have about 6 weeks left to get my master's and I'll be licensed. And, I'm working currently in a co-occurring disorder facility, inpatient, which is where we address addictions and we address mental health issues. And it has been so rewarding for me. There's no doubt in my mind that this is what I meant to do. So that's kind of what, how I got into it, even though it was something I'd always thought about, even back in Chicago, but I never really pursued it, until I got down here. And, it just really from my own experience, as well as having a family member that suffered from addiction and mental illness, I'm able to look at it not only from my own perspective, but I can also look at it having a family member, especially if you have a child, what parents go through, what families go through with an addict in the family. So that's kind of how I just decided that's what I was going to do. And, for me this year, it is all about impact and paying it forward.
Wow. So many layers to that in that conversation. Let's start a little around the addiction side. Where did that all come from?
This is something that's discussed with a lot of my colleagues and professionals. Is it a learned behavior or is it genetic behavior? Well, my thoughts on that issue are, I think people can be predisposed to addiction. I do believe that. But it's also learned depending on, who you hang around with, how you grow up. Because here's the deal. I've seen many people that have grown up with parents that are addicted, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever the addiction is, and they don't. But yet I've seen many that do. So, you can be predisposed to it, but I think also it's a learned behavior. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, but really, when you are growing up, I think some people get to the point where they're just not going to, do what their parents do and they're going to do something different, right? Because they saw the damage or a family member. There's other people that, just say, hey, you know what? My parents did it or whatever, I'm going to do it too. And they can fall right into the wrong crowd. And I think, addiction is a lot based on trauma as a child. So it doesn't necessarily mean, if your parents use, but if there's an issue where there's some type of trauma as a child, could be, have a parent die, could be a car accident, it could be an illness, it could be sexual, molestation, it could be, physical, emotional, mental abuse. It really depends. I think a lot of times it stems from some trauma that manifests itself into self-medication or some type of addiction.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there for a second because for all our listeners, I would love for you guys who are listening to put into the comments whether you think this is a learned thing or a DNA thing, right? Personally, I think that it's both. I think that there is combinations of triggers that can be from DNA. So if you look at the patterns of it, right? I don't know why it's echoing today, but there's an echo. Anyway, there's patterns around it, and if you look at past people, like you just said there, that have been molested in the past, the generations. If you look back at the generations, there is often a pattern of it in the generations before, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an environment that you're brought up in, but it's also in the DNA, that attraction. And I'd love for you to talk about the attraction side of it, because I don't know, from the work that I've done over the years, and like lots of people probably don't know, but I worked in community for many, many years, and as a youth speaker for many, many years. And, you know, with my work that I did on the ground there, I saw a lot of addiction. I saw a lot of, you know, I worked with either prostitutes, street kids, gangs, you name it. A lot of the more vulnerable groups to this sort of thing, right? And they are the vulnerable groups because the environments are not keeping necessarily people safe. It's happened to parents. It's sort of the way they've known as a parent, and then it's kind of gone down into the generation, or the groups that are hanging out, those people that are hanging out within those groups are people that have come across that, and it becomes almost a norm in some areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you've seen, but I know that during these times that I saw a lot of those patterns continue to keep happening because of the environments they were in, because of the fact that's all they knew from the moment that they were born.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Thoughts around that?
You know, I agree, because I work right now with a population, a demographic where I am currently, where there are a lot of homeless people that come into treatment. There are people from a poverty level or a very low socioeconomic environment that come in. A lot of trauma and, you know, a lot of, you know, abuse, and a lot of neglect. And I think, you know, when we look at all the factors that play in, what it really stands out for me from what I see of all this is that because I work with all these different types of people right now, and I have also worked with clientele that are more upper end as well. Okay. But when it comes down to the person that is attracted into, you know, the addiction world, or, you know, attracted into, you know, some type of group mentality, whatever it is you want to call it, they're really looking for someone to care about because they've been neglected. And whatever way that is,
or rejected,
neglected, you know, feeling unworthy, feeling like they're complete, you know, utter dirt, and they're looking to find acceptance and find people that care about them, albeit in a negative way. Okay, so they're attracted to, you know, the people that are not the best crowd because they're accepted, because it seems as if they care about them. They're just looking to make a connection and to see if anybody cares about them because of the height of neglect for so many of these people. And if it, you know, if that means I'm going to go hang out with the, you know, the crowd that uses, you know, crystal meth, then that's the crowd I'm going to hang out with, you know, and I do, because therefore, you know, there's no enrollment here. They take everybody in, and it's just a matter of, hey, I'm part of something, and I've been neglected my whole life, and I don't want to deal with the trauma So this is a great way for me to not only self-medicate, but I have some type of connection and acceptance with this crowd, albeit negative, albeit self-destructive, albeit may lead me to jail or death.
Connection's such a huge part of it. Like,
Yeah.
such a good point of yours to bring out right now. Like, seriously, you know, every human, whether you intentionally or not intentionally, you need connection or want. And that's why if you think of 2020, it was one of the most difficult parts of 2020 for people, right?
Mhm.
Was the fact that there was this lack of connection, this lack of touch, this lack of seeing you face to face, not just over a screen, but over a meal and sharing it together. How do you see this playing out as you continue your work?
Mm. You know, I'm glad you brought up about the pandemic, because what I have seen in this past year, 2020, with the pandemic, is more and more relapsing and more overdosing. And so, because they're isolated
Mm,
is a huge thing for people that suffer through addiction, and connection is so important, albeit, I mean, in a way, thank God we do have internet, because we can't
yeah.
connect with people, but it's, Carrie Marie, it is not the same. I've had to take all my recovery meetings online, so we're never able to see each other and give each other a hug and, hey, how you doing in the meetings, and hey, I really support you. There's none of that. That all has disappeared because of the pandemic. And, people are just feeling so isolated. And I think it's going to be like that for a while. I don't see that really shifting.
So that's kind of scary. Just sorry, I'm going to interrupt because if you
No.
think of that, if you're already seeing an increase on that,
Hmm.
and we were sort of at the touch of it, right? The first part of the year, like from March onwards, we started seeing this, and it probably increased over that time, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's kind of scary concept if we're on the increase of that now, and yet we're not seeing any closing to that, right? Like it's not going to be finished by next week.
Yes.
And so we can clean up the consequences of it all and just get on with life. So how do you see or that we don't keep increasing those numbers but decrease those by what? How do we bring connection into it? How do we change this? What are you seeing or thinking?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be, well, number one, I am hoping the vaccine's getting here soon. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know when it is,
So
but
you're hoping vaccine, this will
yeah,
help keep it at bay. We'll get back to life a bit more normal.
a little bit more normal. I think, though, right now is where we need to, as a human being, to check on people, to reach out to people, to make it even more
Nice.
important than ever, to, just, I mean, and I know we can't do that. Hey, let me stop by and, let's go to lunch thing, but we can make that phone call,
So
send
good.
that text, send an instant message. Hey, I do this all the time with my participants. Hey, I'm thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. Let me know if there's anything you need. Just making that little effort of a thing like a text, just
So
to
good.
say, you know what? I'm here for you. Just because the pandemic is happening, I am here for you. And that's what we do in the treatment centers too. It's like, because they leave, they don't stay there forever. It's like they
Yeah.
go, and we equip them the best we can with so many support systems, that when they do leave and they are, they start to have more of an isolated existence, they have so many support systems. And I think it's providing them resources and systems for them. I really do.
So it's interesting. I'm just checking out on a comment here. So I'm just going to go there. I
Yeah.
disagree in the DNA, Carrie Marie. Yeah. This is from Tanya Allen. I
Okay.
did a lot of research of this year's, in fact, in the DM. Maybe we should just get her on. Oh, DM, sorry, 5 manuals. Sorry, I get it now. Less than 1%, it is in the DNA. So just for a disclaimer on that comment from me, that when I say it's in your DNA, when we are in our mama's womb, we hear things, we feel things. There's so much more than just a chemical makeup of our DNA. And so for me, it's our brain is already, once it's starting to form, it's beginning to form responses, thoughts. And I know I'm probably going to get lots of people disagreeing with me, but I have seen so much from little babies and little inside womb things that you can only know that it is a response because they were taken away from, yet they continue those patterns. And it's been fascinating throughout life. So anyway, that's kind of where I was talking about it. But okay, so back to what Tanya said. So she disagrees, which is great. We like disagreeing. We like to have people having different conversations. This is what it's about. Less than 1% is in the DNA, which is interesting. I'd love to know more about that study, actually. Unless there are gene mutations that influence, there we go, brain and neurological disorders. However, when it comes to trauma and abuse and low self-worth, or even attracted into a world of addiction and disempowering behaviors, I agree it's environmental, and in some areas it becomes the norm. It's 80% or more as a result of the environment. This is the real pandemic, to be honest. This is where change needs to happen. Yeah. Like, what do you think of that, Mary? I'm going to read the rest of it in a second.
Okay. Well, I mean, as I said, I don't think, it's 100% of the DNA. And that's why I say predisposed, meaning possible, and I'm glad that Tanya brought this up because it's a really good point. And again, this is what professionals in this field, behavioral health, we go round and round too. It's really a tough one because there is so much that is learned. However, I agree with what you're saying about being in the womb. And I mean, I'm going to shine a perfect example about this. So I have 2 kids, as you know. My husband has no addiction issues whatsoever. Okay. I did. Okay. I have 1 child that has mental health and addiction issues. And my other child, and they both grew up in the exact same environment, the exact same parents. There was no divorce and remarries, nothing. Okay. I have 1 that has big issues with the mental health and addiction. And I have the other one that has 0 addiction and 0 mental health. Maybe she had a little depression. Okay. But she has nothing to do with drugs or anything, or any types of addiction. So, same environment, same parents, same DNA, from the parents. Was one learned? How would he have learned? I wasn't using when he was born. You see? So is it predisposed, or is he predisposed? Then why isn't the other one predisposed? You see what I'm saying? So somewhere along the way, he learned from his environment.
Well, I'd love to know what Tanya thinks of that. So continuing on what she said was, however, real drug addiction can be inherited at time of conception and during pregnancy. 100% agree, hence my other comment on the environment. What was interesting, and I just did a little smile on it, was she said, I believe the inside of the womb is still an environment. That's a really interesting insight, Tanya. I've never thought of inside the womb as an environment, as a thought. Of course it's an environment, but in that environment, isn't it still part of how our DNA is formed? And that's what I would be questioning on that one.
I never thought of that either, and I'm glad she brought that up. That's a really, really good point of the womb being in an environment, because the embryo to the the baby full grown before it, comes out. All the environment in there. So good point. Good
Yeah,
point.
so good. Thanks, Tanya. That's amazing. And I think it's so good because when we're trying to decide what are our new approaches to bringing change across the globe, because this
Mhm.
is global issues. Yes, you're seeing it in the work that you're doing right now, but this work is not going to be changing because it's only centered at Arizona. It is across the globe. We're seeing this. And homelessness is on the increase. Mental health, we are seeing, although I did hear research that mental health wasn't on the increase. But and so I would love to see more research around that to or thinking around that, or what people are seeing as the cases in maybe work that they're doing across the world right now. But whether it's on an increase or not, I think anything where there's challenges, and this is what I kind of bringing back all the insights that I'm talking around right now, is that I believe the global economic, environmental, we're talking environment's quite interesting, environmental and social challenges creates a space right now for the need for a new approach to leadership. And so in the case of what you're seeing, I think it creates a space for the need for a new approach to seeing how you can lead better, help people to lead on this pathway of change, rehabilitation from addiction, right?
Mhm.
But how do you see that playing out, or what are some of the lenses that you think will be beneficial to help to bring not just a short-term fix to it, but the long-term solutions to this journey or pathway ahead?
I think first off, there needs to be a certain level of awareness. I think for a long time, let's go back, let's talk about addiction, let's talk about mental health. Okay. Back when I got sober, you really didn't talk about that. It wasn't,
Yeah.
We didn't have the treatment center, it was just a matter of, it was a hush hush, and it was just, nobody really thought it was no big deal if it, somebody drank, a bottle every night and did whatever kind of abuse they wanted to. And it just wasn't talked about because it was looked upon as, you know, your family is not right, and you certainly wouldn't have bring up, oh, my husband's an alcoholic or whatever and needs help, and you just didn't talk about that stuff, which you didn't talk about the abuse. Well, it's the same thing with mental health. Only recently, from what I've seen, is that we're even discussing mental health, because again, people associate with that with, like, crazy. They're crazy.
Yeah.
So, or the addict, I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody tell me that the person that's shooting heroin is a bad person. Like, oh my God, he's terrible. She's terrible. It's like, she's not terrible. She has her addiction is
Oh, I'm so
terrible.
glad you're saying this.
but
Yeah,
but
go.
the person is not bad, but
Yes.
this is how society looks at addicts. They're bad. They're bad people. Or a person with mental health. They're bad and they're crazy too.
So we
That,
need to look, if I'm pulling what you're saying, there's this opportunity, this space right now for us to pull that apart and go, if we don't look that way, how do we look at it? If we don't see it as a crazy person, as a person that's, got all these issues and are not going to amount to anywhere. Like, we're going to talk about that in a second, because you've got a personal story on that. So do I. And I think it's really important right now that we go there. But the next piece of that is, if we don't see people with mental illness and addictions as the crazy person, what can we see? And maybe this is the new approach.
I think that we can see it through the lens that this person is a good person. They have an issue with heroin. I'm just taking
Yeah.
an example. This person is a good person. They have an issue with alcohol. you have to separate that out, okay? And also, we need to look as a society, look at what can we do to help that person with that
Yes.
self-destructive behavior. Okay, so let's say it's heroin, right? And we need to start having those resources to help them get clean and get sober. And at the same time, we need to start to dive more into the mental health side, which is, you don't wake up one day and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a heroin addict when I grow up. That does not happen.
Yeah.
We need to really start to have the trained counselors and therapists that
So good.
can talk about not only how to help a person recover and be in recovery and stay clean and sober, but also somebody that can deal with trauma counseling. And if we do not get down to the nitty gritty of the trauma, I guarantee you that person will be back out on the street and they'll be using. If you don't
so
get
true.
trauma, you will never get rid of the addiction. And so we've got to address both.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. So good. And here's the thing that I see as well, that you really pressed on something that was so interesting and so what I think is a reality. And that is that people are seeing that those that are addicted, those that are going through the mental illness, that they are crazy or messed up or have no value. And if we can only swap our thinking on that. And here's the thing, like, I don't know, from my own personal story of major abuse as a little baby growing up as a young girl and stopping that pattern in my early 20s. That was a huge part of my life and my makeup at the time. And, I don't speak about it very often in my work now because, like you say, it's sort of something that is almost like the unspoken. Don't talk about that piece of you. Don't talk about, the fact that I was born to a 16-year-old and put up for adoption, waited 2 weeks for someone to come and choose me at the hospital. So I can only, having had children, I can only imagine what that would have been like as a little baby, just not knowing what this world, coming into a world. And so rejection was a huge part of my thing. And I went in and out of families. And, I remember as a young girl, and it's why I worked with teenagers for so many years and young people, because I wanted to give a young person a voice. And I wanted to be there for someone because no one had been there for me. And I was often misunderstood because I came from broken families. I came from abuse. I came from, and because of that, I had, like I was like a normal teenager with your normal teenage issues, but I also had extra issues. Like I didn't trust people.
Yeah.
I didn't trust particularly people who were in roles or responsibilities in power.
Authoritative.
Correct. Authorities, right?
Yep.
I didn't trust when people would say something and that they would deliver on their word, because I saw it so different in my world as I was growing up. And that affected a lot of my relationships in my early 20s and how I saw myself, let alone what then people saw me as. It's really hard if you've got a story like that for people to see you with a different story. Now, most people in my world now that see me and the work that I do now have no idea of my really humble beginnings and broken beginnings. So I'm one of those people that was really fortunate that I just do not give up. I was in my early 20s. I remember my 21st. It was the only party I've really had, except for a couple of little small ones in the latter years. But I remember sitting at my 21st, and I sat there, and there were these people in my party, but I didn't really know them, and they certainly didn't know the real me. They knew who they thought they were knowing, but they didn't know me. And that was like, and I realized that I can't be the me, because if they saw the real me, they wouldn't like it. They wouldn't want to hang out with that real me. And they certainly wouldn't think I was a really cool person, right?
Right.
And I also realized, that if I didn't change these patterns, I was not going to be alive, because I had seen, I'd gone into a relationship, and that relationship was violent from the moment I walked in there to the moment that I escaped, literally, from death. Now, if I didn't change those patterns, my life was going to continue like that, and my kids' lives were going to continue like that. And I couldn't do it for myself, but when I had children, I could do it for my kids. And so I began this journey of going, how do I disrupt that pattern? And that's where my obsession, a lot of this obsession became so with human behaviors and figuring out, how do we wire to a different pattern? How do we wire so that our behaviors are going to be different to give us a different result? Because if I look at the patterns of people who have come from the background I did, they're either dead, they're either addicted, they're either, doing things that are not good. And I didn't want that as my story as I went forward. What about you? Like, having come from addiction, what's your story on that? The addiction side of it.
I think, because I see it so often, and it's true in myself, from my darkest moments, in the, I always say, in the depths of the darkness of addiction, created the person that I am today. And I wouldn't have been able to. And of course, now mind you, this takes work. I mean, it's not like, we go through these dark things and then all of a sudden it magically happens to us. But I think that a lot of times we take that severe pain and that the depths of addiction, and we come out of it because we know there's something that we've got to do to make a difference in our lives. And once we see that we have to change, we have to do something different. Otherwise, we're going to be either, in jail, dead, or, that'll be just the end. And I think when we get to that point where we know we need to make that change, we take that pain and we use it to propel us into something where we're going to make a difference and make an impact. But I think, it's that happening is such a different process and timing and growth for each and every person.
So good.
You were saying, about breaking patterns. If we don't break the patterns that we've, lived and almost died by.
Yes, correct.
We will be dead.
Yeah.
That will be the end. So, I think it's really, everybody talks about, well, I hit bottom, or when you hit bottom. I don't believe in hitting bottom.
I don't know about you. I hit bottom so many times, and I just had to kind of get back up.
Bottom, bottom is really realizing in your life that this has got to change, or life is over, that is over for me. And I think it's coming to that harsh reality and understanding that this wasn't, this is what happened, but what you do next is what's going to really count.
And I love that. That's our golden nugget. Say it again. Say it again.
It's not what you did, it's what you do next that counts.
Yeah.
And so, all that you did, you can't change it.
You can't, right?
But from this second forward, you can do something different. And when you make that decision, that's when life starts to change for you. And that's where you can realize that, what, I can make an impact on humanity. I can and help, people that need my help, because when we've stepped outside of ourselves, because addicts are all selfish. I mean, it is all about them, 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 them. Okay. And once that they realize that they can actually do something about it, then you clean them up. I always tell them you get cleaned up in the body, and then we get cleaned up in the mind.
Yeah. Wow, that was so good. This is what happened. It's what you do next that counts. I love that. That's so good. So good. And I think here's the thing. It's a journey. Just as leadership is a journey, our lives are a journey. And I think, depending where you are on this journey, that the pathway forward is there's things that we can do to help us get along that pathway quicker or more effectively, but each journey is going to be different for everybody. And just as with both, so that was our old story. It's not our story now. In fact, what we do is we get to help a lot of people now, whereas we were the ones needing the help many, many moons ago. It's like, and we've had to disrupt that pattern, and we're now going, hey, this is how we get to help a lot of people, and it gives us massive drive to help people, for me to give voice, for you to help support and to grow and to get them turned around and rehabbed. So what would be a few strategies that for those that maybe are listening right now that are struggling with addiction, are struggling with the pain, the hurt, rejection, loneliness, isolation? Like it's been pretty real for a lot of people across the world right now. What are a few little things that you've done? Not what you've learned so much, but what you've put in place. You use a little strategies, maybe daily strategies. I don't know. I'm going to give you one of mine, and that is gratefulness. I tell you that I'm really religious about doing my gratefulness in the morning. It's my first thing. And the reason being is that it's 3 things that I'm grateful for in my last 24 hours, 3 things I'm grateful for in my next 24 hours. So today. And I do that because it's hard to feel sorry for myself when I'm feeling grateful. Yeah. It's hard to not get up and do my work when I become from an in focus to an out focus. And I realize that my actions and decisions are having an impact on other people.
Totally.
And there's no matter what's going on in the world, there is always, even on my worst days, Mary, my worst days, I can still find things to be grateful for. What about you?
Well, I totally agree with that. I mean, and I can't tell you how many times when I recognize I started a little of my own self-pity, and I said, "Oh, please, girl, you better start looking at those gratitudes." And that always seems to snap me out of it. I mean, perfect example, the pandemic. Has it affected my family? Of course it has. It's affected everybody around the world. But you know what? I'm grateful for what I do have. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for, my marriage. I'm great. There's people way, less, I would say, have so much less than I do. When I think that, oh gosh, this is hard or that is hard. It's like, no. Gratitude is a big one for me. Also for me is prayer and reading the Bible every single morning. Every single morning I do that. Incorporating mindfulness and staying in the present. And that is something that I work on all the time, is living in the present moment. Because when we look at the past, we get depressed. And when we look at the future, we get anxious. And I don't want to have anxiety or depression. So I just try to stay in the present. And that is a work in progress every single day. But also, I also have in place, systems and accountability partners where I can reach out to them should I have, issues that I need help with. I have people that I can reach out to, and I also, exercise and eat very healthy to, fuel my body. So those are some of the things that I do on a regular basis to live in, a strong recovery program. But I do know is that when you are in addiction and you're going to recovery, your recovery is your own. You can never do it alone, ever. This is not a journey we do alone. We do it together. So that's something.
That's so true. I don't know about you. I didn't have a lot of people who went on the journey with me or have stayed with me, I should say, along that journey. So there's been different people along that journey. Was there anyone in particular that, helped you along that journey or has helped you, or are there groups of people? Because maybe that's what, if we see what's worked for you, maybe that might help for someone who's listening.
Well, I think for me, obviously, you're one of them, as you well know.
Yay. Sorry, my daughter's about to go away for a week, so I just need to, you keep going, you keep talking.
Okay.
Thank you, babe.
Well, Carrie Marie, you are one that's definitely, helped me. My girlfriend, Kayla, who was at the first Smart Recovery meeting I ever went to and became a very close friend to me. And it's always been there for me to support me. My participants in my Smart Recovery, I learn from them every single time I have a meeting. Yeah. They are truly inspiring what they go through. And connecting with my colleagues and my other, professional counselors, and seeking professional counseling when I need it.
So good.
Yeah, counselors are encouraged to have their own personal counseling because we need to rejuvenate, and we need to be able to go somewhere where we can discuss and debrief what goes on with us while we're helping, others counseling. So that's what I do. And my husband, he's been like super, super supportive. He's like my rock.
Yeah. Look, so I see it as two, three things that I've got from this, and that is that we can look at the person as an addiction, as challenges, as in messed up, all that side of it. But if we don't look at it through that lens and we look at it as a human person who has value and goodness as a first thing, but they've got a problem with, that's one thing. I think that too, that if you've got the right supports, the right that it's actually okay to reach out for help. And that's not showing that you're messed up. It's saying, hey, I just need a help to do this journey well, right? And I think if we can see that as that's actually a really awesome thing, and all of us do it, whether we're struggling with addictions, whether we're struggling with being messed up, or whether we're needing to go to the next level in our companies or whatever it is, right? Like every one of us needs to know that it's okay to reach out if we need that extra help to be more effective, to be more efficient, to be, able to be who you're meant to be, which is what you started with when we had our conversation. And I think the third thing for me was that this is a reminder of how much it's a journey. And we can't change the story from yesterday even, or what was, or what has happened, but it's what we do next. So those are the three kind of prime things I've got from our conversation. If I was to ask you, what's one thing you've got, if not three, but one thing that you've got from this conversation we've had today, which has been amazing, by the way?
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it too. I think, just having the opportunity to talk about mental health and addiction and being able to realize, just, in this conversation, making that connection and bringing that awareness to the decision table here, and in this show, that it is so important that we look at this because, by putting our heads in the sand isn't going to work because it's only going to get worse. And I mean, obviously everybody's aware of the opioid crisis, and, it's just, we need to look at it. We need to not be afraid of it, and we need to address it and bring that awareness to people so that we can, collaboratively start to make a difference in the world of addiction and mental health.
Oh, that's so good. Like, I agree with everything you just said there. So good. And Tanya actually said up here, it must be looked at as a health issue. So we were talking about addictions before.
Yep.
Asthmatics take medication, get treated with no judgment. We treat cancer sufferers with empathy. Yet people with mental health, we pass judgment. Not just on the individual, but their family members. Oh, so good. Yes. So good.
True.
How do we educate the community and the individuals who suffer that they just need to be treated?
I think, again, it's just providing appropriate resources and awareness and, helping people to understand, because you have to remember it's been looked, like Tanya was saying, if somebody has, asthma, they go get help. If somebody breaks a leg, you go to the doctor and get your cast on it or your boot, and we look at them with sympathy. We need to have that same outlook on mental health and on addiction. And what can we do? Because the bottom line is, just like somebody that goes in and may have cancer, they're sick, right?
Yeah.
The person that has mental health issues and addiction, they're sick. They need health care. And it's just got to be part of our framework of our healthcare and society. It's just got to be. And the more awareness and resources we can provide for people to understand about addiction and what really is true about it and mental health, and not be afraid of it or not look down and pass judgment on it, the better we can support the people that need our help.
So good. So good. It's a process. I've just this is Tanya again. Man, girl, you're on fire today. She said, awesome conversation and wisdom brought to the table, Mary and Kerry Murray. Perfect. Thank you. It's a process. I've just written a chapter in a book, Forever Changed by Suicide. It's now kickstarted my writing off on a complete book on mental health and my story. That's amazing. Oh, so good. And I think this is the thing, like this is what these conversations are. And I think if we are to change the results at all of what was, we have to be willing to have these open conversations where we're just starting to gain some awareness of what's happening in your world, what you're seeing, how you see that. How can we see it differently? What if we used a different lens? How would that look? And that's, to me, the power of a new approach to leadership and what this is all about. Now, just to finish up, I do know that, you talked about isolation, and that one of my things around isolation, I feel that a solution to that as a global space is actually collaboration. And so building all of the things that I'm doing as a company around how can I build these amazing ecosystems that represent really effective ways of doing collaboration, because I don't think that it's necessarily done well. And one of the things that I get to collaborate with you on is Voice Advocacy Foundation. And, we won't talk about it now, but I know I'm going to bring you on again at some stage on the decision table where we will talk much more about Voice Advocacy Foundation and the work there. Good. For me, it's such a blessing, though, to have you, my soul sister, along on the journey to help bring this change, to give this voice and to bring the change and awareness, because that's what voice advocacy is around, is first the awareness, then the education, then the sustainability solution at the table, right? Yep. And so, I think that's just a beautiful way to finish up that's how we do it. We can't change everything else around the world, but we can be faithful with what's in our hand right now. Yep. And something that you and I can do and collaborate on and be faithful with is this little seed called Voice Advocacy Foundation. And, I just wanted to publicly thank you, and the privilege it is to have someone else coming on that pathway, that journey with me and helping to build that out. So, you are forever someone special in my world. And
Oh,
I want to say, I see you. I see you as an amazing human with lots of value that has gained so much insight by living a life that has at times been full of challenges, dark moments, where you go, what the heck, and you go down the addiction line. But I see a resilience. I see an amazing woman with such a heart and a determination to be part of the change that's much needed across the globe. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for helping to be some of the difference that is needed out there right now.
well, I want to thank you because it is an honor, my pleasure, my privilege to be able to walk this journey with you and giving me the opportunity. Every time you say Voice Advocacy Foundation, I just get a big old grin on my face. I'm just like, yeah. And I am just so glad that I was able to come on and have this conversation with you. And you are super, super special in my life. And you are my heart and soul sister, and you always will be. And I am looking so forward to, what the good Lord has planned for us and next year, and the impacts that we can make together. And I just feel completely blessed to be part of this. And I'm just so glad that I can collaborate with you, who is an spectacular, exceptional, amazing. So it is my honor and pleasure, honestly.
And I didn't even pay you to do that.
Nope.
Say that.
Nope, you didn't.
Thank you. I appreciate you. You know what?
Right.
Like, if anyone wants to get hold of you through Voice Advocacy, what's the email address? Concierge at?
Concierge at voiceadvocacyfoundation.com. Concierge at voiceadvocacyfoundation.com. That's the way to reach me regarding Voice Advocacy Foundation.
Perfect. And through anything around addiction, if someone's got some questions, or are you on Facebook? How's the best way for people to reach out if they've got questions?
I'm on Facebook, or you can send me an email in my personal email, which is Mary Kingery, MaryKingery, the number 1 at gmail.com. So Mary Kingery 1 at gmail.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody would have, or more information on what we discussed today. I'm more than happy to share.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. What an amazing, amazing time on the decision table today. I am, literally, I just thought, how do I do it differently this year and just start with a bang? And so I was like, I'm just going to get some friends on here, and we're going to have a conversation every day. And I'm going to pull out some insights and see how I can add that to the paper that I'm writing right now. And I'm actually really, really enjoying. I had a great conversation with Nikhil yesterday. So for those that haven't checked that one out on the decision table, it was an amazing conversation. And sorry, I got distracted. Tanya, you're so good. Thank you for being here, Tanya. We'll have to get you on one of these conversations, because girl, you have been pumping out those comments, and I reckon you and I can have a great conversation. So that was kind of what I was going to say, was anyone that wants to be one of these people, where the spaces are filling up, because I do want to give some of my collaborative partners spaces on here to have a conversation, because they're just amazing people. And so make sure, if you want to be a part of a conversation, you can see we're just getting on. We don't know where the conversation's going to go, but every day has been just, and we're only 3 days into it, but there's just like little gems, little golden nuggets that we go, that was a mic drop moment. And we had that today as well. So If you want to, reach out to me, because I'm really willing to have conversations around anything, as you can see. And I think that, if we just keep having nice little conversations, comfortable conversations, then and think that we're going to agree with everything along the way, then nothing's going to change. And
Right.
I think if we're willing to talk about anything and everything, then across the globe, we're going to see different leadership happening, because we're looking through different lenses as we gain awareness, to be able to look through a different lens. And so that is my hope as we have these conversations. Really, it's not, yesterday I rocked up in my cap and I just come from a hot, sweaty workout. So it doesn't have to be perfect, these conversations. So if someone has a theme or a thought or an insight around something, and you feel that this is really going to be beneficial to these conversations, then I don't care if you don't have your hair looking great, whatever, wearing the right things. This is not what this is about. This is about just real, raw, like having a conversation. So thank you, everyone that has been a part of this today. So we're signing off here at the decision table. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
And have an awesome rest of your day, whoever you are, wherever you are in this world, and some extra love, because this topic has been pretty full on today, but awesome. So thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Happy New Year.